The sky above Velmora cracked with thunder, even though there were no clouds. It wasn't a storm, it was warships. Corporal Reinhardt tightened his grip on his plasma rifle. He stood outside the Grand Hall on the neutral moon of Velmora, his armor dusty and dented from months of border duty. He was one of the few human soldiers trusted to stand guard during the peace summit between Earth and the Dravari Empire. The Dravari were not human. Their skin shimmered like silver under sunlight, and their tall, graceful frames made them look more like living statues than living beings. But their eyes, deep, glowing violet, were always watching. Their queen, Virelia, had arrived earlier that morning with her royal guard and her daughter, Princess Kailani. The princess was barely 10 years old, small and curious, with silver skin a few shades softer than her mother's. She had smiled at Ryan when she passed. He had smiled back. But now the world was shaking. Explosions echoed across the mountains, and a dark shape fell from the sky, a rogue cruiser. Not registered to either side, the alarm screamed. Ryan's radio came to life. Unknown hostiles. Eastern wall breached. Protect the royals at all cost. The peace summit had turned into an ambush. Ryan didn't hesitate. He turned and ran into the Grand Hall, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Inside, smoke filled the air. Dravari guards lay scattered on the marble floor, stunned, not dead. Whoever had done this wanted something. Someone. Ryan pushed through the haze, his armor scraping against stone. His eyes scanned for movement, and then he heard a soft cry, like a frightened kitten. He followed the sound to a corner room, half collapsed by a blast. There, huddled behind a broken pillar, was Princess Kailani. Her silver cheeks were streaked with tears, and her tiny hands trembled. Ryan lowered his weapon. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm a friend. I'm going to protect you." The little girl looked up, eyes wide and scared. She didn't speak, but she nodded. A blast rocked the building again. Dust fell from the ceiling, and a voice shouted from outside, deep and rough, not human. They were coming closer. Ryan crouched beside her, pulling off one of his gloves and handing it to her. "Hold on to this. It's lucky," he whispered. Kailani clutched it tightly. Then he stood, rifle raised, and positioned himself between the girl and the door. The first attacker entered, a tall alien in dark armor, helmet glowing red. He spotted Kailani instantly and raised a weapon. Ryan fired first. Got one clean shot to the shoulder, and the enemy dropped. 2 more came in. Ryan didn't wait. He moved like he had in the trenches, calm, quick, deadly. His side burned. He had taken a hit. But he didn't stop. He grabbed Kailani and ducked through the broken wall, cradling her close with one arm, rifle in the other. She clung to him, whispering something in her native tongue. Prayer, maybe. Outside, the Grand Hall was in flames. Dravari ships were down. Human soldiers were fighting to reach the Queen's chamber. They were too far. Ryan had one goal: get the child to safety. He darted through the gardens, dodging fire and debris. One of the rogue fighters spotted him and fired a shot that nearly took off his leg. He fell, gritting his teeth, but still wrapped his arms around the girl to protect her. He crawled behind a stone wall, breathing hard. His armor was scorched, and blood dripped from a wound in his side. Kailani touched his face gently. Her violet eyes shimmered with fear and something else. Trust. Ryan gave her a weak smile. Told you I'd protect you. A human dropship finally landed nearby, scattering the enemy with a blast of sound. Friendly soldiers rushed out, securing the area. "Corporal Hart," one of them shouted. "We've been looking everywhere. You all right?" Ryan nodded and handed Kailani to a waiting medic. "She's safe," he said. "It's all that matters." As he collapsed into the arms of his team, the world around him blurred. Sirens, shouting, the distant hum of engines, it all faded. He had done his job. Later, when the smoke cleared and the attackers were driven off, the Dravari Queen was informed. Her daughter had been saved, and not by one of her own elite guards, but by a lone human soldier. Queen Virelia stood in silence for a moment after hearing the full report. Her sharp features softened. "Where is this soldier now?" she asked. "In medbay, recovering," replied her advisor. "Then I will go to him," she said, because in Dravari culture, there were few acts more sacred than protecting a child. And this human, this Reinhardt, had done so with his own life on the line. It was the beginning of something that would change both their worlds. Corporal Reinhardt woke slowly. The lights above him were soft, the air clean and cool. He was in a medical bay. He could tell by the sound of monitors and the smooth feeling of the bed beneath him. His body ached, his side was tightly bandaged, and a dull pain throbbed with every breath. A nurse walked over and smiled kindly. "You're lucky," she said. "You took a direct hit, but your armor absorbed most of it. You'll recover." Ryan blinked, trying to remember everything. Then it came back all at once. The attack, the fire, the little girl with silver skin, her tiny hands clutching his glove. Is the princess safe?" he asked. "She's perfectly safe," the nurse said. "Because of you." Out a long breath and closed his eyes. Relief washed over him like a warm wave, but his rest didn't last long. Only a few minutes later, the door to his room opened, and every doctor, nurse, and soldier nearby stood up straight. Queen Virelia of the Dravari entered. She wore a long royal robe that shimmered like starlight. Her silver skin glowed softly, and her violet eyes were calm but powerful. A golden symbol sat on her forehead, marking her as the ruler of her people. No one had expected her to come here. Queens did not visit soldiers, but she walked into Ryan's room with quiet purpose, her head held high. Ryan sat up quickly, ignoring the pain. He tried to salute, but his injured arm didn't move. "Your Majesty," she raised a hand gently. "You need not bow, soldier." Her voice was smooth, like wind across water. She stepped closer and looked directly into his eyes. "You are Reinhardt," she said. "The human who saved my daughter." "Yes, ma'am," he replied. She stood by his bedside in silence for a moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she placed a hand over her heart, the traditional Dravari sign of deep respect. "You did more than protect her," the queen said. "You shielded her with your own body. You fought against enemies stronger than you. You risked your life for a child who was not your own." Ryan shifted awkwardly. "It was just my duty. I couldn't leave her there." "Many would have," Virelia said, "but you did not. It means something. To me, to my people." That moment, the door opened again. A small figure stepped in, Princess Kailani, wearing a soft blue robe, her silver hair tied in loose braids. She held something in her hands, Ryan's glove. When she saw him, her face lit up. She ran to his bedside and held out the glove to him. "You dropped this," she said softly. Ryan took it, smiling. "Thanks, kiddo." The little girl reached out and touched his arm gently. She didn't say anything more, but her eyes were bright with emotion. The queen watched them closely. Something in her gaze changed, just a flicker. But it was there, trust, connection. She turned to the soldiers standing near the door. "Leave us," she ordered. "I wish to speak with the soldier alone." Everyone hesitated for a moment, surprised. Then they obeyed, filing out quietly. The room was silent again. Virelia sat in the chair beside Ryan's bed. She looked less like a queen now, and more like a mother. "She speaks of you often," the queen said. "She tells everyone that you were brave like a mountain, that you were kind to her. When she was afraid," Ryan chuckled softly, "she was the brave one. I just got her out." Virelia tilted her head. "You are very humble. That is rare, especially for your kind." He smiled. "You mean humans?" "Yes," she said with a small grin. "But maybe I was wrong about you." She paused. "You see, the Dravari have not always trusted humans. Our histories are filled with old wounds, long wars, misunderstandings. That's why this peace summit was so important. But when the attack happened, I feared it was the end of everything." Ryan looked at her seriously. "But it wasn't. Your daughter is safe, and I think this can still work." Virelia studied him. "Perhaps it can. And perhaps you're Reinhardt, the reason why." She stood slowly. "I have made a decision, one that some may not agree with, but I trust my instincts." Raised an eyebrow. "What kind of decision?" She looked down at Kailani, who had climbed into the chair beside him, her head resting gently against his arm. "I want you to stay." the Queen said, as her protector, her guardian. Ryan blinked. You mean permanently? Yes, she trusts you. And after what you've done, so do I. He hesitated, surprised. I'm just a corporal, a ground soldier. I don't know anything about royal duty. You know enough, she said. You know how to protect, how to care. That is all that matters. Ryan looked at the princess, now half asleep beside him. He thought about Earth, about his squad, about the long years of war and orders. And then he looked back at the Queen. All right, he said. I'll stay. Varelia smiled. For this soldier, she said softly, you have not only earned my thanks, you've earned my respect. That is not given lightly. As she turned to leave, Ryan felt something strange in his chest. It wasn't fear or pain. It was purpose. And it was only the beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the attack on Velmora. Corporal. Reinhardt now walked through the bright crystal halls of the Dravari royal palace, his armor gone and replaced by formal guard robes. They were silver and blue, the colors of the royal family. Still wasn't used to them. He wasn't used to any of this. He had been trained as a soldier, frontline fighter, not a royal protector. But now he was Princess Kalani's personal guardian by the Queen's command. And strangely, it was starting to feel right. Ryan stood outside the royal nursery chamber. Inside, soft music played, and Princess Kalani was working on her studies. She was reading from a glowing tablet, her small silver fingers tapping across the screen. She looked peaceful, focused. Then she saw him through the glass and smiled wide. She jumped up, rushed to the door, and pulled him inside. Ryan, you're late, he chuckled. I'm not late. I've been standing outside for 10 minutes. She crossed her arms with a fake pout. Well, it felt like 10 years. He gave her a playful nod and sat on the bench beside her. What? Are you learning today? Galactic history, she sighed. It's boring. Want me to quiz you? He offered. She brightened. Only if I can quiz you back. That became their new game. Ryan would test her on royal lessons. And she would surprise him with random questions about Earth. She was especially interested in animals. Tell me again about that fuzzy one that climbs trees, she said. Thinking hard. Sloth, he guessed. No, the loud one. Monkey. Yes, monkeys. You're so lucky to have them. Ryan laughed. They've got flying lizard hawks. I think that's pretty lucky too. The two shared a laugh. The sound echoed softly in the peaceful room. Unknown to them, Queen Varelia was watching from a quiet viewing platform above. She had been doing this more often, observing from a distance, silently watching how her daughter and the human soldier were bonding. At first, she had worried the connection would fade, that it had only formed in the panic of war, but it hadn't. Faded, in fact, it had grown stronger. Kalani trusted Ryan completely. She laughed more, studied better, and even slept peacefully against something she hadn't done since the attack. And Ryan, he had changed too. He stood straighter now. His eyes were sharper but calmer. He no longer looked like a lost soldier. He looked like he belonged. Later that evening, during a small royal dinner, the Queen invited Ryan to sit near her throne. It was unusual, but by now the court had stopped questioning her decisions. This bond between you and my daughter, she said quietly, has become something important. Ryan nodded, unsure how to reply. She sees you as more than a protector, the Queen continued. She sees you as a friend, perhaps even as family. Ryan looked down. She's changed my life too. I never thought I'd care this much, but I do. Queen Varelia studied him closely. I see that. There was a long pause. Then she asked, do you know the story of the Kavari tree? Ryan shook his head. It's a symbol in our culture, she explained. It grows alone, high on the cliffs, strong, tall, and unbending, but it only blossoms. When another species of bird builds its nest in its branches, the flowers bloom because of trust between two very different lives. Ryan listened carefully. She looked at him meaningfully. You are the bird in our tree, Reinhardt. Unexpected, but important. He smiled softly. That's a beautiful way to say it. The Queen nodded. There are those in my court who still fear this bond. They think letting a human this close is dangerous. But I no longer agree. Because I saved her? Ryan asked. No, she said. Because you stayed. In the days that followed, the palace began to shift. Dravari nobles who once ignored the human soldier now greeted him with polite bows. Kailani's teachers requested his help. Even the royal guards, once cold and proud, began sharing meals with him in the training halls, but not everyone was pleased. Some Dravari generals whispered that a human had no place in royal affairs. Others claimed the queen was becoming too soft. Ryan heard the rumors, but he didn't let them bother him. His focus was Kailanian, keeping her safe. That's why one evening, when she asked to leave the palace for a small walk through the gardens, he agreed. It was quiet outside. The moon above their world was pale and peaceful. Do you miss Earth? Kailani asked suddenly. Ryan looked up at the stars. Sometimes. But this feels more like home now. She smiled. I'm glad you're here. Suddenly he felt something. His instincts as a soldier never left him, and right now, they were screaming. He grabbed Kailani's hand. Stay behind me. In the shadows of the garden, a figure moved too fast, too quiet, an intruder. Ryan reached for his sidearm, eyes scanning the trees. Who's there? He called out. No reply. The figure fled before Ryan could give chase. The security systems had failed. Someone had gotten into the royal garden, and they had been watching Kailani. The moment passed. But the warning was clear. Not everyone wanted peace. Later that night, Ryan reported the incident to Queen Virelia. She said nothing at first, but her expression grew dark. They are testing us, she said, trying to break this bond. She looked at Ryan with firm eyes. We must not let them. And in that moment, something passed between them. It's not just duty, not just respect, but the beginning of something deeper. A connection built not by politics or treaties, but by trust, loyalty, and quiet understanding. It was no longer just about protection. It was about unity, and both of them knew. The storm was not over yet. E-Palace was quiet, but not calm. Since the garden incident, every hall, every door, every tower had been locked down. Soldiers moved in pairs. Scanners buzzed with every step. Reinhardt had not slept in 2 days. He had failed once. He had let a stranger get close to Princess Kailani. That mistake would not happen again. Now, he stayed closer to her than ever. He followed her to every lesson, stood outside her bedroom every night, and personally checked every guard rotation. But even with all the extra security, he still felt something was wrong. Something was coming. Late one evening, Queen Virelia invited Ryan to her private council chamber. Only a few royal advisors were present, and they all stood when Ryan entered. Virelia gave a small nod. Corporal, we've confirmed the intruder's identity. Ryan's heart tightened. Who was it? Dravari warlord. One we thought was dead. His name is Varzek. Ryan had heard that name before in battlefield reports during the war. Varzek had once commanded thousands of soldiers. He believed humans were a threat that had to be crushed. When the peace treaty was signed, he disappeared. Now he was back. And what does he want? Ryan asked. The queen's face was pale. He wants to destroy the peace, and he wants my daughter. Not to hurt her, but to take her, to use her. Ryan clenched his fists. We won't let that happen. Virelius. Voice grew sharp. He already made his move. We just received a message. He has kidnapped 3 children from noble families. He's leaving us a warning. Your peace is weak. Your walls are thin. Give me the girl, or more will vanish. Silence filled the room. Ryan's blood turned cold. He won't stop. No, the queen said, but neither will we. Night Ryan visited Kailani's room. She was curled up with a story tablet, reading a tale about ancient heroes. When she saw his face, her smile faded. What's wrong? He sat beside her gently. Do you remember the man from the garden? She nodded slowly. He wants to hurt the peace your mother's building, and he's not going to stop. Kailani looked down. 'Cause of me? No, Ryan said quickly. Because of what you represent. You're a bridge between 2 worlds. That scares people like him. Kailani looked up. Are you scared too? Ryan hesitated. I'm worried, but I'm not scared, 'cause I'll protect you. You promise? I swear. She gave him his glove, the one she still kept close. Then you have to wear your lucky glove again. He smiled and slid it back on. 2 days later, the Queen called an emergency council meeting. Ryan stood at her side. We found Varzek's location, said one of the generals. A fortress built inside a dead asteroid, outside our borders. It's a trap, another warned. He wants us to send a team. He'll be waiting. I don't care if it's a trap, Ryan said. I'll go. The room went silent. Queen Varelia looked at him. Alone. I've worked with special teams before, Ryan replied. A small group can get in without being seen. I don't need an army. I need speed. One of the generals laughed bitterly. You'll get yourself killed. Maybe, Ryan said, but what if I don't? The Queen stood. I'll allow it, but you won't go alone. That night, a ship left the palace hangar in silence. A fast stealth vessel lolled, but invisible to most scanners. Inside were Ryan, 2 loyal Dravari warriors, and a human pilot who owed Ryan his life from an earlier battle. As they flew through the blackness of space, Ryan sat alone in the dark cargo bay, checking his weapons and gear. He wasn't just going to rescue hostages. He was going to send a message. The asteroid fortress floated near a dying sun. Sharp metal towers rose from its surface like claws. It had no lights, no signals, no movement. But Ryan knew Varzek was inside. They landed quietly. The Dravari warrior stayed behind, ready to pull him out if needed. Ryan moved through the tunnels alone. Rifle in hand, steps silent. Inside, the air smelled of dust and fuel. The halls were built from scraps of old warships. Symbols of hate were carved into the walls. He followed the heat signatures on his scanner 3 in one room. He opened the door slowly. 3 alien children, scared, hungry, and tied. Ryan whispered, I'm here to take you home. But before he could move, he heard the sound of heavy boots behind him. A voice echoed through the chamber. I knew they would send you. Varzek stepped out of the shadows. He was taller than Ryan, with red armor and scars across his face. His eyes were cold. You're the Queen's pet soldier, the human who thinks he belongs among us. I'm not here to talk, Ryan said. Good, Varzek replied, drawing a long blade. Then fight. The battle was fast and brutal. Varzek was stronger, but Ryan was faster. He dodged the first swing, fired 2 shots, and rolled behind cover. Sparks flew as the alien warlord charged. They fought in the narrow hallways. Blades clashing, boots slamming, walls cracking. Ryan took hits. But he gave them to, and finally, when Varzek lifted his weapon for a killing blow, Ryan pulled his hidden dagger and drove it into the warlord's chest. The giant stumbled, gasped, and fell. Minutes later, the children were safe on the ship. Ryan stood at the airlock, blood on his face, breathing hard. The pilot looked at him. You all right? Ryan nodded slowly. Let's go home. Back at the palace, Queen Varelia stood on the balcony with Kailani beside her. When the ship landed and Ryan stepped out, bruised, tired, but alive, the Queen's eyes filled with relief. Kailani ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You came back, she whispered. I told you I would. The Queen approached. You saved them, and you faced him. Ryan gave a tired smile. It's over. She looked at him with deep respect. No, it has just begun, because now the galaxy knew no one touches the Queen's daughter, not while a human soldier still draws breath. The palace gates opened slowly as Ryan stepped out of the royal ship. Dravari guards lined both sides of the landing pad, standing tall and silent. Behind them stood royal advisors, council members, and nobles. Even the palace staff had come out to see, but their eyes weren't cold anymore. They looked at Ryan with something new, respect. Ryan's armor was scratched and stained from the battle on the asteroid. A bandage wrapped around his arm, and a faint limp touched his steps. But he walked with calm strength in his arms. He carried one of the rescued children. The other two followed behind, holding the hands of Dravari warriors. As Ryan approached, the guards saluted, one by one. A human soldier once seen as an outsider, now honored like a hero. At the top of the palace stairs stood Queen Virelia and Princess Kailani. The queen stepped forward, her long robe flowing behind her like starlight. She looked at Ryan not as a ruler to a soldier, but as one soul seeing another. "You brought them home," she said softly. Ryan set the child down gently. "I promised I would." Kailani ran to him and hugged him tightly.
You did it.
"You really did it," he smiled, placing a hand on her head. "You were brave too. You waited for me." The queen stepped closer. "You risked your life for them. You stood against a warlord and won." Ryan nodded. "He won't be hurting anyone else." Virelia's eyes shone. "Then it is time that you receive the reward you deserve." Later that evening, palace halls were filled with soft music and glowing lights. A royal ceremony had been prepared not for politics, not for war, but for honor. Dravari leaders from across the stars arrived to witness it. Even human ambassadors were invited, shocked by the news. The grand hall glowed with silver light. At the center stood a raised platform, carved with symbols of unity and courage. Ryan stood at the base of the stairs. Freshly dressed in royal armor gifted by the queen, it was unlike any uniform he had worn before sleek light, marked with the sigil of the royal family. The room quieted. "Queen." Virelia rose from her throne and walked toward him. She carried a small, shining blade ceremonial, not for battle. As she stepped before Ryan, she spoke loud and clear, so all could hear. "Corporal Ryan, Heart of Earth," she said, "you were once a guest in our palace, then a protector, then a savior." She looked into his eyes. "Now we offer you a place among us." She placed the blade gently on his shoulder. "By the power of the Dravari crown, I name you a Blood Oath Guardiana title reserved for the highest protectors of our realm." A wave of shock moved through the room. That title had never been given to a human. It was rare even among the Dravari themselves. Ryan blinked. I don't know what to say." Virelia smiled. "Then say nothing. Just accept what your actions have earned." She stepped back. "But that is not the only gift we offer." She turned to a servant who carried a small box lined with red velvet. Inside was a pendant of glowing crystal, set in gold. This belonged to the first queen who made peace with another race. "It has not been worn in over 500 years. Now, it belongs to you." Ryan accepted it slowly. It pulsed with gentle warmth in his hand. The queen looked around the hall. "Let this be a sign to all Dravari and human that courage is not defined by blood, but by heart." That night, the palace held a celebration unlike any before. Ryan stood with Kailani, beside the great crystal fountains. She handed him a fruit from the royal garden. "You're famous now?" she teased. "I liked it better when I was just your bodyguard," joked. "You're still my bodyguard," she said proudly. "You just have more medals now." He laughed then. He noticed the queen approaching. She wore no crown now, only a soft silver gown. She looked more like a woman, and less like a ruler. Kailani skipped off, leaving them alone. "I hope the ceremony wasn't too much," Virelia said. "I've been shot at, chased, and nearly crushed by falling debris," Ryan said. "But that many people staring at me? That's the scariest thing so far." She laughed quietly. "You handled it well." He stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars above the open sky dome. "You didn't have to do all this," Ryan said. "Yes, I did," she replied. "Not just for politics, not even for my daughter. For you." Ryan turned to her slowly. "I've seen many soldiers," she continued. "Brave ones, loyal ones. But I've never seen someone care the way you do. You didn't come here looking for honor or reward. You came and stayed. Because of who you are." Ryan looked down, thoughtful. "I just did what felt right. That," she said softly, "is why it mattered." There was a long pause. Then she said something that surprised even herself. "I want you to stay. Not because you have to, but because this place is better with you in it." Ryan felt something stirred deep inside, something warm, strong, and honest. "I'll stay," he said. No hesitation, no fear. That night, as the music faded and stars blinked in the sky, Ryan stood outside Kailani's room, watching over her as she slept peacefully. He wore the pendant around his neck. He no longer felt like a visitor. He no longer felt like a lost soldier from Earth. He was something more now. A protector, a guardian, and perhaps the beginning of something even greater, because sometimes the greatest reward is not gold or power but being seen and being trusted. Months passed. Velmora, once a quiet moon known only for a failed peace summit, had become a symbol of unity. It was now called the Moon of First Trust by both humans and Dravari alike. At the center of this change stood one man, Ryan Hart, the human. A soldier who had saved the princess. The outsider who became a royal. Guardian, the warrior who risked everything to protect peace. Ryan now lived inside the royal palace. Not as a guest, not as a stranger, but as part of the queen's inner circle. His days were filled with training new guards, advising the court on human affairs, and, of course, spending time with Princess Kailani. She had grown more confident, stronger. She practiced with a small training staff now, often laughing as Ryan guided her steps. "You're teaching her to fight?" Queen Varelia asked one day, watching from a balcony. Ryan smiled. "I'm teaching her to defend herself, just in case." The queen nodded. "That's wise." He looked up. "She wants to be brave." Like her mother, Varelia's expression softened, and perhaps, like her guardian too. But not everyone welcomed change. Some Dravari still whispered behind closed doors. Some humans in power still questioned why a soldier had chosen to serve an alien queen, and deep in the outer systems, small rebel groups followers of the fallen. Warlord Varzik still plotted in secret. Ryan knew peace was not permanent, but he also knew this time they were ready. One morning, a message arrived from Earth. The United Terran Council invited Queen Varelia to attend a joint alliance ceremony. It was to be held in the core human city of Altara Prime. It would be the first time a Dravari queen would walk among humans, and she didn't plan to go alone. "I want you to lead my security detail," she told Ryan. "Of course," he said. "I'll make sure it's safe." She paused. "And I want something more." He looked at her, curious. "I want you to stand beside me," she said. "Not as a guard, but as my equal." Ryan blinked. "What do you mean?" She stepped closer. "You've earned the respect of my people and the love of my daughter. You've protected our future, not just with strength, but with heart. I don't want you in the shadows anymore. I want the galaxy to see what we've built." He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'll stand with you." The ceremony at Altara Prime was unlike anything ever seen. Thousands gathered as the Queen's ship descended through the bright skies. Humans and Dravari stood side by side, waving flags marked with the sigil of unity. When the Queen stepped out wearing her silver robes and royal crown, cheers echoed through the city. But when Reinhardt stepped beside her, wearing the royal pendant and armor of a blood oath guardian, the cheers turned to thunder. The world had heard the stories now. They were seeing the legend that night. After speeches and celebration, Ryan stood alone on a quiet rooftop. Looking out at the glowing city, he remembered where he came from: dusty outposts, forgotten battlefields, orders shouted through static-filled radios. He had once believed he was just another soldier, one name in a list that no one would remember. Now, everything had changed. But he hadn't changed his heart. He still protected the same way, still believed in the same things. Footsteps approached behind him. It was Queen Varelia. "You always stand where the stars are closest," she said. "I like the quiet," he replied. She walked beside him, looking up. "Do you remember the night?" "I gave you the pendant?" "Yes. You thought that was your greatest reward," she said. He looked at her. "Wasn't it?" She turned to face him fully. "No. Your greatest reward is what you gave yourself. Purpose. A place where you are seen, where you belong." He nodded slowly. "You gave me that chance." She shook her head. "You earned it." There was a pause between them, calm and full of meaning. Do you plan to return to Earth someday? She asked. He thought for a moment. Maybe to visit. But I think my home is here now, she smiled. Good. Because the Queen had grown used to his presence, his calm voice, his sharp eyes, his quiet strength, and maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to lose that either. By the next year, a new alliance had formed the Celestial Accord, a union, between humans, Dravari, and other neutral species. It focused on peace, trade, and defense, and at every summit, every important event, one name was always present: Guardian Reinhardt. Children across both worlds read stories about him. Soldiers trained under his teachings. Leaders spoke of him as the living symbol of trust between two worlds. But for Ryan, none of that fame mattered. What mattered was walking Kailani to her classes. What mattered was watching over a queen who had once watched over an empire alone. What mattered was waking each day and knowing he had found a reason to stay. Years later, when Kailani became a young leader herself, she gave a speech to her people. I once feared the stars, she said. But then, a man from another world gave me his glove and told me I was safe. Didn't speak our language. He didn't know our ways. But he protected me. He believed in me. I believe in the future. She pointed to the highest statue in the Capitol Garden, a tall figure in armor, with a child by his side. The inscription read, "He protected a child and changed the galaxy." Reinhardt, human among the stars.